Barry Silverberg, Director of the Center for Nonprofit Studies at Austin Community College, and welcome to the Civil Society, where we explore issues affecting our communal well-being through a nonprofit lens. We're a proud partner of ACC TV, but given COVID-19, we continue to operate virtually on this, our 5th season. 3 years ago, the Austin American-Statesman noted, and I quote, "During the past decade or so, giving groups have blossomed all over Austin. Moderately comfortable individuals and families pool their resources, invite nonprofits to apply for grants, then they vet those nonprofits and vote on grant winners. Among the most successful and best documented of these donor-advised funds has been Impact Austin, started for women by charismatic Rebecca Powers in 2003. Impact Austin has shepherded over 2,000 women on their philanthropic journeys in the past 18 years. Today, we talk to Rebecca about her new book, Trust Your Cape, How Women Find Their Power in Giving Back. Prior to founding Impact Austin, Rebecca was a highly successful sales representative for IBM for 14 years before retiring to raise her children. She and her husband, Phil, live in Austin and have 2 grown children, Brad and Claire. Rebecca earned her BS in Business Administration from the University of Richmond. Since starting and then transitioning from leading Impact Austin, Rebecca has become a philanthropic booster for women's giving circles. She speaks nationally, inspiring women to connect their capacity to give with their confidence to do it right. She serves on the executive advisory board of the Friends of Children and is a strategic advisory board member of Allies Against Slavery. She just retired from the national governing board of the Jeremiah program, on which she served for 10 years. I first met Rebecca at as Impact Austin was developing from one woman's tribute to a loved brother to a formidable and effective vehicle for raising hundreds of thousands of much needed dollars to support our area nonprofits. I was privileged to offer guidance on governance and operational issues to Rebecca and her partner, Glenda Holmstrom. While initially I was very doubtful about their idea's future, I was blown away by their passion, their thoughtfulness, and their openness to creating a new kind of philanthropic venture. I remain honored to have been the first and only male to receive Impact Austin's For Pete's Sake Award at its first annual meeting. It's an inscribed bowling pin that still sits on my office bookshelves to this day. Rebecca's new book, Trust Your Cape, How Women Find Their Power in Giving Back, is a powerful recollection of the journey she started after reading a magazine article on an airplane and deciding on a wonderful way to honor her brother's memory. Welcome, Rebecca, and thank you for sharing with me a draft copy so I could read it in advance. As I wrote to you after I finished it, your book is powerful, it's honest, it's sensitive, it's authentic, and I just loved it. As I said to you, it's humanity par excellence, offering insight on the making of a real leader, and without question, you are a genuine leader in influencing and growing women's giving circles. And it explores the challenges of balancing a family life and philanthropic passion. And I appreciate your honesty and directness in how you address those issues. And as I said to you, heart just jumps out at every page. It's a great book, and I hope you're really, really proud of it. So how does it feel to have completed this book and released your story to the world? And so we don't forget it, where do viewers get a copy?
So, first of all, Barry, I am so grateful for the opportunity to share a bit of my story and hopefully inspire others. As you initially inspired Impact Austin, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. Trust Your Cape will be available on Amazon.com on May 25th, which is just a few days from the day that we're recording this. And I'm really excited about that. When you ask what it's like, what it feels like, my first response is it feels like delivering a baby. And I've done that twice.
I well recall that experience.
Pardon me?
I well recall that experience.
Yes. And I have to say that not only from my husband's point of view, but also mine, who delivered the baby, um, it's been 8 months in the making, which is close to the gestation period of a human infant. And I kid my husband right now, this did not happen with our children, but I think I deserve a push present for having delivered this. He's not so sure he's inclined, but I think the present will be in how many people I can influence. And when I submitted my initial manuscript, the first draft that would be edited, that was my most vulnerable point in this whole journey, because it was the first time that I was letting someone read my heart, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
and the honesty that I was willing to bring to it. And I have to tell you, when I hit the send button to my editor, I did have a few tears. And I think some of it was relief, some of it was uncertainty, and I think some of it was some insecurity. So I've had a good journey in the process of creating this story, or
So
chronicling
talk
my
a little
journey, I
about,
guess.
yep. So talk a little about yourself. I mean, what led you to found Impact Austin? Um,
So the initial impetus for starting Impact Austin was the fact that at the time I started it in 2003, my brother was in his last few weeks of life, suffering from the terminal effects of colon cancer. And I read a magazine article about a woman who had done what we're doing here now in Austin, in Cincinnati. And I read that on an airplane flying home from having seen my brother for the last time. I was angry at my family. We didn't behave well. We were all there together. Angry at my brother because he didn't present himself to the doctor until he was at stage 4. You men can be like that. And also, I was angry at God. And when I read that magazine article on the airplane, I kid you not, my life changed in a moment. I read it and said, oh my gosh, not only do I think I can scrape together some money to be a part of an organization in Austin, but I think I can start one like this woman did in Cincinnati. And I think I can find 99 other women who can do it with me. I don't know who they are, but I'll go find them. And this will heal the hole in my heart. So that was the impetus for starting it. I thought I would do it once, learn about my community. I'd never put a penny back in my community except for my place of worship in my kids' PTA. But both of those were communities I knew,
mhm.
not a community I wasn't really a part of, the broader community. And I thought I would do that once, help heal the hole in my heart, and move on. And 18 years later, we're still doing it.
Fantastic. I remember the early days so how would you describe Impact Austin to someone who's familiar with it? What is its basic premise? Um,
So we call it Giving Circle Collective Giving Organization. It's a group of, in our case, women who pool their financial investments. We put it in a grants pool. We ask nonprofits to apply for our money. Our members are invited to sit on grant review committees. We train them how to review grant applications. And these committees choose finalists for our money every year. Every woman gets one vote on who they believe should get our grant. And that is done by secret ballot intentionally. And we then have a celebratory meeting where we celebrate who the grant recipients are. We used to do that on an annual cycle. Now we do it 2 different times a year. It makes it easier on our members and gives us more opportunities to make grants in the community. That what makes it work so well is that by virtue of women coming together, learning about the community, pooling the same investment. In our case, our investment is $1,250. $1,000 goes to the grant pool and $250 goes to help support operational costs. And because every woman gives the same amount of money, every voice is the same. And that egalitarian approach is very attractive. So, and we don't care whether you know anything about the community or not. We're willing to train you and educate you to help make a difference. And so it builds community. And I think when you build community, especially women with other women, we find that not only do we give more than what we give to Impact Austin because we learn about needs in the community, but we also give to each other. We have members helping other members find jobs. We have members helping other members find resources in the community. So that mutual aid is another aspect of our impact.
So do you think the concept of Impact Austin works especially well with women versus men, or you think it's universal?
So let's be clear. There are collective giving organizations that are comprised of all genders. There are giving circles that are just for men, that only men are members of. And so it comes in all flavors. When we started Impact Austin, we did a lot of research to just understand why this giving model worked. And there were two women, Sandra Hardy and Margaret Taylor, who wrote a book about the 6 C's of women's giving. And I never remember them all at the same time, but it's create, change, commit, connect, and celebrate. There's one other one. And we made sure that every one of those aspects was included in the model of Impact Austin. And when we learned those, we each went to a male person in our lives and said, here are the things that we're going to do with Impact Austin because it resonates with women. What do you think? And I know, especially for my husband, he was like, you go, girl. That's not how I give. And he said, I am happy to support that, but I am probably more transactional. I'm happy to write a check and know where it's going, but I don't need to review applications. I don't need to celebrate my success. Women just give differently. And I have to tell you, Barry, in 18 years, we haven't had a gentleman ask to be a member. So I think that kind of speaks for what the strengths of it are relative to women.
I guess a gentleman wouldn't ask to be a member.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And can I just say, here's what's interesting. Sure. 2 gentlemen did come to me, I'm going to say it was in the first 5 years of Impact Austin, saying, you know what? I want to start a men's organization just like Impact Austin. And 2 different unrelated situations. I spoke to both of them, and my response was, you know what? You get a group of guys together that you think want to help you build it, just like we did with our initial founding board. And I will come, share how we did it, and hopefully inspire them to want to be a part of building your organization. And you will know in that meeting who's interested and who's not. And each of them raised their hands when I finished saying that and said, oh, no, 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 no. I'll go find 100 men to give $1,000, but I want you to manage it. I want you to run it. I want you women to do the legwork. And my response was, you know, that's not our model. I'm happy to mentor, but we're not going to do the work. And I thought that also spoke very well to, you know, the differences in the way men and women give. But I got a good chuckle out of it.
So this aspect of personal engagement is obviously essential to the model.
Yes. Here's what's really cool. With Impact Austin anyway, you can volunteer as much as you want, or you don't have to volunteer at all, but you still have the same voice when it comes to deciding who gets our grants. So Impact Austin attracts women who are very, very busy, but want to make a contribution and know that their money is informed, that other women are vetting applications and they feel confident in our process. There are also many of our members. We have about 135 of our members every year sit on a combination of grant review committees. So it's a good number who are choosing our finalists, which says we get a wide view of lived experiences, people's expertise weighing in on what might make a good grant opportunity for us. And women who want to learn about the community and have time to give back in a meaningful way by being a part of this process. We meet the needs of a lot of women, and that does make it attractive, regardless of how much time you have.
Well, I think that's what the secret of success is, just what you just said. It meets the people's needs as well.
Yes,
So,
and yes.
so it may be an obvious question to you, but why is it so important to give back and pay forward?
I never thought about that till I gave back with Impact Austin. And again, it all started about healing the hole in my heart. I didn't even think about what the positive consequences would be of giving back. I will tell you that it has transformed who I am. And it has helped me see that I have a larger capacity to give back than I ever thought I did. But I needed that initial opportunity to help me see that I could do even more. And the joy that I get from giving back has propelled my family to see the same thing. And each of my kids and my husband are now philanthropists in their own right, partly because they saw how much joy I got and they wanted to feel that same thing. It wasn't necessarily verbalized, but they're all very proud of how they now give back, which they never would have done had they not, frankly, if my brother had never died. So it's important to do that because it also takes away from me and I'm looking outward. The other thing is Impact Austin has enjoyed some success that I believe is replicable, meaning we grew exponentially in our first 5 years because that was our model and we believed we could do it. We got calls from across the country going, I live here and I'd really love to do what you do, but I can't imagine finding 500 women. And it was an opportunity for me to say, hey, I'm not going to do it for you, but I would love to share how we made that happen so that you can be successful there because it will make your community better. And it's not going to hurt Impact Austin or the community of Austin if we share our success.
Right.
And I feel like I just have a responsibility to do that.
So describe a little bit about the early days, the doubters you came across, and how you converted folks. Because I think it really was a process of conversion for a lot of people.
That's a great way to say that, Barry. I agree. Here's what served us well before I get to you, because you are one of our early skeptics. That I do believe we converted. But there were 6 of us who put Impact Austin together. We call ourselves the Kitchen Table 6 because we did it around everybody's kitchen table. And we were not known suspects, known philanthropic suspects, if you will, in the community. Nobody knew us. We didn't even know who the nonprofits were, who the leaders like you were that could help us, fortify our model. And that naive optimism helped us because we couldn't hear the skeptics who slowly learned about us talking behind our backs going, aren't they cute? Isn't that a great idea? Let's see what happens. And we just knew it never occurred to us that we couldn't be successful. And I was glad we didn't know those who thought we couldn't do this. You were the first leader in the community that we reached out to, and I hope you don't mind that I tell on you. But Glenda Holmstrom, whom you referred to in the introduction, she's like a researcher extraordinaire. She is a walking reference library.
Absolutely.
And And you know that. If she doesn't know something, she will research it. And she was really good on the internet back in 2003, which I barely even knew how to use. She found you and she emailed you once or twice and no response. You were a busy man. We understood that. And
No,
she
I just
called.
ignored her.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. And that we believe. But she said, you know what? We really need to talk to this guy. So I think I'm going to offer to take him to lunch and let's see if he bites on that. And sure enough, you were coming back from Waco as you, and I share this in the book because, and you stopped at a fast food restaurant,
Arby's.
Arby's, there you go, took the call and agreed to meet us. I remember it was at Serrano's on Anderson Lane. And what I can't remember is if we had sent you a copy of our initial bylaws, because that's what we wanted to talk to you about. You know, are these solid? What are we missing? What aren't we doing right? Regardless, we sat down, we did our little introductions and got right down to business. And you took our bylaws. I have to say, we were pretty proud of them until you pulled out that fountain pen that is your signature implement of communication and wrote all kinds of very helpful, constructive notes on our bylaws for us to really think about. We left, our heads were spinning, but we were so grateful that here was someone who didn't really know us. And I have to say that your attitude was one of wanting to be helpful. We felt you were knowledgeable, but we weren't really sure you believed in us. So when we got in the car, we're like, oh boy, here's our opportunity to go back, think about what he said, and then we're going to go back to him and say, okay, we listened, here's what we did, what do you suggest? And you were so kind to give us the time. We attended some of your sessions, learning about, you know, what it takes to be a board member. And so it ended up being a beautiful professional relationship. And I dare say over the years, a deepening friendship. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But you were a skeptic who was willing to work with us. Probably, you know, what I surmise, though you never said it, until we didn't respect what you were saying or come back and say, hey, we really are, you know, working on this. And you were not easy on us. So when and if you ever share something positive about Impact Austin, we don't see it as a platitude because you do not suffer fools. And we knew that the minute you got out that fountain pen. So you called us to attention and
watch out.
And it exactly. But Barry, you know, there it is. Sorry. But here's the other thing that happened. Because we took what you said to heart and put one step in front of the other to build our model, it got to a point where we needed to broadcast our opportunity to the community and let people know that we had grant opportunities. And we didn't know the nonprofits in town. And we came to you and said, hey, not only do we need to share that with the community, but we also need to have a place to train 85 women who want to review grants. And you were extremely gracious in giving us classroom space to do that on Saturdays and the boardroom at ACC to announce our opportunity to the nonprofit community. 183 people showed up for the announcement of that first grant. And that's what really propelled that first grant cycle because people really wanted our money.
Yep.
So we're grateful.
I believe in you now.
But so I'm going to go away from you if that's because I have I want to.
It's not about me. It's about.
Yeah, I know, but I just meant that the skeptic part. Yeah. The other skeptics we had were the nonprofits. And we found that out on the day that we announced that we had $126,000 and we were going to make a grant of that size. And when we were in that ACC boardroom, we were so proud. That was our very last slide. And nobody in the room had any idea how much money, because we had talked about having 100,000. When we showed that slide, a high profile male, nonprofit executive who was sitting near the front stood up at the end when we asked for questions and said, "Are you ladies really up to this?" And that was where my IBM sales training kicked in. I took a deep breath and smiled and said, "I think you're going to have to apply for our grant to find out." And then moved on and answered another question. But it was, again, an opportunity for us to understand that until we could put a successful funding cycle together, there were going to be lots of skeptics.
Well, you certainly have overcome those.
I hope so. I hope so.
So in the book, you describe the challenges, because I thought this was really interesting, and I thought it was a large part of your evolution in the family. Phil's, you know, ambivalence, I think would be a good word to use, and the impact on your family when your kids, particularly I think it was your daughter who basically communicated, "You ain't around, mom." So talk a little bit about the impact on your family and a little about the evolution, because I think what's important here is what you've offered in this book is a very insightful, frank, and honest appraisal of the cost, okay, of leadership. So talk a little bit about that.
I like the way you say that, Barry. I'm sorry, I'm just making a note. Yes. So I was so driven to start Impact Austin because I wanted to heal the hole in my heart. And my husband and I, Phil, talked about it for 4 days, almost nonstop when got off that airplane. And I didn't have all the answers, but I knew I could do this. And he was supportive. I wouldn't say enthusiastically so, but his comment was, "If you don't try this, you will never know, and I don't want you to have regrets." So it started with that premise. What happened was Impact Austin became my life. I never felt so confident, so optimistic, so even competent, even though I didn't know what I needed to know. And it propelled me forward in the face of any challenge. I woke up every day excited about what might be, even if it was problems I would have to solve. What happened was it became my lover. And I spent a ton of time on Impact Austin that I then didn't give to my family. So I was around physically, but not emotionally, and I wasn't engaged. Now, my husband had just announced that he was going to retire from his high tech job. And for 10 years, I had been the mom and dad doing everything by choice. And when he had announced he was going to retire, it was before we knew my brother was going to die. But the timing was perfect because I'm like, this is awesome. It's my chance to fly. And he can be the dad and get to know his kids. Without meaning to, I took more advantage of that than I should have. And so we had times where, the kids would ask me, our son, are you coming to my baseball game? Oh, I wish I could, but I have an Impact Austin meeting. Claire's like, can I just sit on the floor in your office and just talk? I'd love to do that, Mom, but you're never there. And Phil was very good at pulling me back out of the clouds saying, this isn't a job, it's a choice. And right now you're choosing Impact Austin and not the family. And oh my goodness, that pierced my heart. But I was so compelled to get Impact Austin off the ground that I couldn't always hear. And so I would say that it took until the 5th year of Impact Austin for us to figure out what a good balance was. And I give a ton of credit to Phil for just holding things together and not making me the villain, which really he didn't have to because my actions were, so outside of the house and not in. However, I will tell you that there were good things that happened. Claire said to me the first year, Mom, I've never seen you so happy. Here's some money for Impact Austin because this is what I can give you now, but I want to be a member when I grow up. And our son, who said, Here, I'm going to give you money because I know how much it means to you. This was at Christmas, which is our faith tradition. And so I did see that what I was doing was role modeling giving back. I wasn't role modeling well how I do that and keep balance in the family.
Mhm.
And I think every leader has
Absolutely.
that challenge. And I dare say 18 years later, I think I'm better at it, but I think it's a journey.
So what I take from what you just said, while the common saying is behind every great man, there's a great woman. In this case, behind every great woman, there's a great man.
Honestly, I wouldn't have been sick, truly. And here's what was interesting to me. Phil is not he doesn't have a lot of words, but he has actions. And I never knew if he thought what I was doing was good or if he was proud of me. He can't tell me, but he can tell other people. And I got an email from his sister one time who said, If you only knew how proud of you he is for what you've created and what you're doing in the community. And so I've had to appreciate that because he supports me in so many ways. But so he did know I was doing good. He just wanted me to be around a little bit more, and I don't blame him.
Absolutely.
That's a
So
compliment.
where does the title Trust Your Cape come from?
So it really has two different meanings. Trust your cape for me initially is about trusting my instincts. And I started Impact Austin honestly with a cape around my neck, standing on the edge of a cliff and jumping before I had all the answers. But I knew without a doubt I would have those answers before I hit the ground. And that is just a part of who Rebecca is. There's a Guy Clark song called The Cape, and it's about a little kid who stands on the top of a garage with a flour sack tied around his neck. And he's getting ready to jump off. And the song goes something like, he didn't know he couldn't succeed, so he did. And so that is a lot of my makeup. The other part of Trust Your Cape and talking about power is that I think we think of a cape as something on the inside, but I've come to believe our cape is what we have on the inside. It's what our power is. Whether it's moxie, positivity, spunk, whatever you want to call it, grit. I think I have a lot of grit. And using the power that we have to change our circumstances. And I did that with Impact Austin. And I end my the last sentence in my book is, what is your cape made of? Encouraging us all to look inside and use the strengths that we have to make a difference.
So I know what I got out of your book, and I've shared some of that already. What would you when you finished writing it, okay, and now that you're thinking back on it and it's about to hit the real world and create all kinds of ripples, what are the hopefully right? What are the top two learnings that you want readers to glean from your book?
So that's really hard to just say two.
Well, you've done hard things already, so this should be easy.
Thank you for encouraging me. Uh, number one, that role modeling is a thing and that it is so important for our actions to mirror our words. And I mean that from the standpoint of what I did with my family, but also as I was leading Impact Austin, my words didn't always mirror my actions, and I had to learn sometimes painfully from that. So role modeling is a thing, and I think the other is find your passion. My story is just an example of what I did to create a positive ripple, if you will. We all have the opportunity to do that in some way. We have to find our passion. And then instead of sitting back and saying, gosh, I wonder if somebody would ever do that, say, I think I'm going to. And it doesn't matter if you fail or you don't get as far as you think you should. Taking a step forward is better than doing nothing at all. And that has paid dividends for me my whole life as I look back on it. Those two learnings for me were really important. One thing I want to say though is when I initially started writing this book, I want to be clear. This was really a love letter to my family. I wanted them to see how they had inspired me and what I learned and all that happened. And I truly believed that if all I did was keep that on 8.5 by 11 paper, stick it in my hope chest, and when I passed away, maybe my grandchildren would read it and go, oh, that's what she was about. I didn't know that. And that would have been enough. I had someone step into my life last fall saying, no, everybody has a story and it's worth telling. Don't make it small. And so that's when I got the courage to really, put it in print and share it with the world, and we'll see what happens.
Well, I, for one, am glad you did it.
Thank you.
Okay. I was really pleased to see it was about you and the personal journey as opposed to just about giving circles. And I thought it would be, sort of a research piece with tons of facts and figures. And it's so much more interesting the way you've done it. There's lessons to be learned. I mean, it's like reading, it's not a biography, there's so many lessons to gather from what you've shared. So
Barry, can I just tell you that is a huge credit to my editor. When I submitted my manuscript, her response back to me was exactly what you said. She said, your story is more interesting than the story of Impact Austin.
exactly.
So put yourself in the story and talk about how it impacted you and your family and personal things. And she said, you are going to be uncomfortable and it's going to make you vulnerable. But I want you to be proud of this book 5 years from now. And that's because you're telling your story. So I'm grateful that that came across to you.
Yeah. And I especially appreciated the vulnerability aspect.
Whew.
I was both surprised and pleased to see it, frankly.
I have to say that just hearing what, your I call it your review, your endorsement of
Yeah,
the book, um, I teared up when I read that because it is exactly what I hoped for. And what it allows is if people don't agree or think it's whatever, it is who I am.
absolutely.
That it is. So I don't make apologies for how it all comes down, and hopefully it gives somebody else courage to write their story.
Absolutely. I'm working on my book right now. No.
Good.
So knowing what you know today, okay, what would you say to the younger Rebecca about her future? What would you say to the Rebecca back at undergraduate school when you were getting your bachelor's in business? What would you say to her?
It's important to make plans because you need to have a roadmap. But when there's a fork in the road, you need to follow it. And that life is not a straight line. What I learned in this whole journey of starting, building, leading, and letting go of Impact Austin was it was not in my life plan, but I do believe it was my calling and it's where I found my purpose. And had I not been open to taking the fork in the road, I would have missed a joy that's indescribable. So, um, and I think during my life, I've taken some forks, which have been positive. The other thing that I learned is that I thought if you were going to change, you had to make a big change all at once and do a 180. What I learned through the Impact Austin journey was really small pivots can create really big change. So when I had to learn how to lead differently, I had a leadership coach that said, just do this one little thing for a week, and then we'll work on the next thing. It never occurred to me that I could take things a step at a time and build some competencies that would serve me well. So pivoting and taking forks in the road.
So this may be the same question in a different way. So what might you have done differently from hindsight? How might you have handled your initial leadership success and the challenges you describe in your book in terms of relationships with others? How might you have done things differently?
So I had to learn a lot about my ego. I think every entrepreneur has some amount of ego, and that's healthy, because you've got to be able to sometimes wear a suit of armor and, dodge people who are, saying things that aren't so positive, and you've got to keep going. And what happened with Impact Austin's early success is I think my ego got out of alignment with what was really necessary to be a positive leader. And I believed that having this success meant that, I just had to twist everybody's arm to finally come around to my way of thinking, and that made me a good leader. As opposed to celebrating the strengths that everybody else had that I didn't have, seeing that together we could move together forward. And I had to learn that painfully. I lost a couple of friendships and had some board members who would team up behind me, rightfully so, but at the time it was very difficult. So I did get grace from some board members who appreciated the fact that I really did look inside and change some of my behavior to manage my ego. I will say that from the standpoint of leadership. Tactically, what all of us on that founding board would have done differently initially is we would have set aside some of the investment money that women gave us to help fund the operations of the organization. It costs money. It costs money for D&O liability insurance, all these things that we raised outside of our membership, which just caused a lot more work. And then when I left leadership, we paid someone to lead the organization because no one was going to do it for free like I did as the founder. And because we hadn't asked our members to help support that, it was a shock to the Impact Austin system. And women thought, this is such a simple concept. How can it cost that much to run the organization? So we had a lot of education to do that now if I started one, I would start that education right from the beginning, and I think we wouldn't have had the hiccups that we had.
Rebecca, this has been a wonderful conversation. You were a beautiful person when I first met you, even more beautiful today. I just loved reading again the vulnerability, the honesty, the heart, and I think that your book really just not only is it well written and engaging. I mean, I read it in literally 48 hours or less. I couldn't put it down actually. I'm waiting for the audio version where you read it out loud.
You know what's funny is Peter's son is challenged that way, and he's in his 40s, and he's like, Ani Reb, that's what he calls me. Would you create an audio book? I hadn't considered it until he said it, but the book is dedicated to my brother's
I
kids.
saw that.
That is, again, that is a responsibility I need to take on.
Well, you ought to consider it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I will. And here you are again. Okay. offering
You can't
opportunity.
get BS out of your life.
Barry, thank you. I even love reconnecting, even if it's over Zoom. We'll have to have a drink together and
We'll have to do
and
coffee.
celebrate it.
So listen, thank you. I believe you're in Phoenix, so thank you for joining us from Phoenix.
Not to
Fellow
worry.
traveler. And to our viewers, thank you for watching and participating in civil society. And as always, thanks to Kate Tolliver, our managing producer, for her support. You can read more about Rebecca Powers, Impact Austin, find a link to purchase her book at Amazon, and the topics and issues we discussed today. And you can view previous and future episodes of Civil Society at nonprofitaustin.org/civil-society. I wish you all a great day. And again, thank you so much, both for the interview and all that you've done to make Austin and a lot of other places much better. Thank you, Rebecca.
Godspeed.
Y'all take care.